Welcome to JC NERR and How We Got Here, the show where you get an inside look into the stories and experiences that brought each of our staff here to the reserve. So I'd like to extend a special thank you to our guest today, Andrea Habeck. She is our Stewardship Coordinator, and how long have you been here actually?
I have been here for 7 years.
7 years. Ooh, so I'm excited. That seems like a lot of history, that really cool stuff that we can talk about. Well, we're very much looking forward to having you and hearing about your story of how you arrived here.
Okay.
So, starting back at the very beginning, what sparked your passion for science? Like, what happened? Was there a experience or maybe a trip or something that like made you realize like this is what I want to do?
No. I know for a lot of people they have like that moment or like a field trip or something that that made me really want to get into science, and I have no like specific event. I just have always been interested in, like, gravitated towards science and outdoorsy things. We spent a lot of time outside as a kid, so it just seemed that was just always my interest for as long as I can remember. So I know everyone has that moment. A lot of people have that moment, but for me, it was just always part of my like day-to-day kind of.
But see, I feel like that's even cooler because you're just always immersed in it, so you can't really think of a specific moment because you're just always in it.
I guess so, yeah. I just always liked it. All my favorite classes were always science. I always preferred to be doing outside things, and so that's how that happened.
So as you were doing these outdoorsy things as a kid, now did you grow up in this area, or were like in this kind of the borders of the reserve, or were you grow up in an area outside of that?
So I didn't grow up in the reserve or in South Jersey, but I did grow up in New Jersey. I grew up in coastal New Jersey. So I grew up in Monmouth Beach, which is right near Long Branch and Seabright. It's right on the ocean, and there's a river behind it. So like a really small coastal community. And grew up near Sandy Hook, Gateway National Recreation Area. I don't know if you're familiar with that part of New Jersey.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm from like down south, so like that's all like Narnia to me. It's like a brand new world. But that's really cool that you were able to grow up in kind of that coastal area, especially having the two completely different bodies of water when you have the ocean versus a river.
Right.
So that's really cool. Now, when did you move down to this area?
So I still live up closer to where I grew up. I live in Neptune, New Jersey, which is Monmouth County. So I grew up in Monmouth County, and I worked in Monmouth County, and then that's where I still live now. But when I started working with the reserve in around 2012, my time was split between here and up in Sandy Hook. And then through the years, just progressively, I've been spending more and more time down here instead of splitting my time.
Okay. Yeah. So, for the different habitats and ecosystems that you experienced down here in the Pine Barrens versus up where you were from, was there anything you were surprised by, or anything that was really stood out and was really unique to you about these kind of two different areas?
Monmouth County, New Jersey is still it's pretty suburban, just it's coastal, old fishing towns, but it's suburban and some farmland out in western Monmouth County, so that's what I was used to. I was pretty surprised coming down here about the Pine Barrens. I mean, there's no Pine Barrens up in Monmouth County, New Jersey, so that was an ecosystem and habitat that was new to me.
As you were growing up through elementary, high school, you're starting to try to figure out what you want to do, then we get to college.
Yep.
So what school did you go to, and was there a particular reason why you chose that school?
I went to McDaniel College, which is a very tiny liberal arts school in the middle of Maryland.
Okay.
Landlocked. And why did I go there? I went there, my mom went there, which is how I found out about the school. And I don't know, I liked the small size of it. I was playing soccer, so I went and played for their team, and that was kind of the main reason why I went to that school. And started out as a biology major.
Okay.
Yep.
So you said you started out as a bio major. Did that change as you went through your college career?
I did. I started out biology pre-med, medical science, and then towards the end, I had to take, I'm trying to remember what class I took. It was some environmental science class. We're starting a new major, an environmental science major.
Okay.
It's like a spin-off of the biology major. And I had taken one of the classes and became very interested in natural resource management and environmental science as opposed to the medical side of science. And so that kind of took my path elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. I know when I was talking to Anna, that she had also, and like you and myself, went to a smaller liberal arts school. And I know that with both of our experience, we loved the fact that we were able to, it wasn't as strict with these strict programs, and if you were in one and you switched to another, that it was this whole kind of kit and caboodle of taking extra courses. But I know, and I would be interested to hear if it was with your liberal arts college as well, that you were able to, it was a little more fluid. You could kind of shape and tailor your major to what you were more interested in.
A little bit. It was more fluid in that when I decided I wanted to double major in environmental science, I was allowed to work with the professors to have biology credits count for another major, work with the professors and my advisor to make it so I didn't have to do like a whole second major on top of, like second course load on top of one major. But they were actually kind of pretty strict at my school.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it was a big pre-med school, like a big sending to Maryland pre-med. Going to medical schools in Maryland, so I think they were pretty strict, pretty rigorous. They might change now with the environmental science side of it, but my class was the guinea pigs for their environmental science program, so we got to do all sorts of different stuff and figure out what was working and what wasn't. So what was your favorite either course or experience that you had in college? Maybe a trip or an internship or? My favorite course, which I think a lot of people could relate to, was I took a semester-long camping course.
A course for
camping. Yeah.
That is incredible.
And it was my senior year, so it was even better. So we did, the whole thing was learning about different ecosystems in Maryland. So we camped all over Maryland. It was the fall semester, and we had to write papers on, the ecosystems that we were camping in. But then the camping side was no trace camping. So we did leave nothing behind, a lot of hiking into the campsites instead of driving up, that kind of thing. So we camped on Assateague Island, which is a barrier island in Maryland, Shenandoah Park, which is the national park up in the Appalachian Mountains, and a variety of places in between. So, I mean, I'm sure there were other classes that I really liked, but that one, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, I've never heard of a school having that kind of a program. So besides the fact that it's great that you guys you made it, you went on the eco-friendly side, you tried to hike there and you left no trace behind. Besides that being really cool, you got to experience all these different ecosystems and these different habitats and really be fully immersed because you're literally living there.
Yep.
So that's a really, really awesome experience.
So that was really cool. I don't know if they still do that or not, but it was fun when it lasted.
Hey, at least you got to be the one to experience it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was your senior year. So after you had graduated, did you go right into the career field, or did you take your master's, or?
Nope. I always started working my junior year between semesters, so the winter break. I was looking for an intern, or the summer before actually. I was looking for an internship. And I had put my application in with the American Literal Society up at Sandy Hook. And somehow Dr. Norb Sudi got my application and said, hey, I need help surveying the beaches up in Sandy Hook. Do you want a job? And so I just started working for him, using RTK GPS equipment to monitor coastal topography. Okay. And I was just a field technician. They taught me how to use the equipment, and I just went out and did it. The next year, he had suggested I start taking classes in GIS, so Geographic Information Systems, so mapping and cartography classes, which my university didn't offer. So I took some independent study classes to learn how to do that. And then after I graduated, I did the Watershed Ambassador Program, the American Watershed Ambassador Program, and worked part-time with NORB, doing more surveying and coastal topography monitoring.
Okay, well that's cool. You've been with NORB like longer than you've been like with JC NERR, so that's actually really, really cool. NORB, we're
going on, I think we're 10 years. It's actually this month is 10 years. Yeah, I've been working for NORB. Yep.
Now, how did you like the Watershed Ambassador Program? Like your experience in that program?
I loved it. I had a great time. In Monmouth County, the Watershed Ambassador is with the Monmouth County Planning Board, so just very different than like being seated at the JC NERR or at the, a lot of them are at county conservation offices. I got to see a whole other side of environmental work, which is, working in the environmental planning board offices and permitting and all that sorts of stuff. And it was really great because if you took advantage of the opportunities, you got to go, you sat in environmental commission meetings, you went and took trainings at DEP, you learned from a lot of people at DEP, the networking was incredible. So I really liked it.
And that's really cool that it was such a unique experience, because I know that's something that, unless you're going into college or taking courses that are specifically towards like planning and law and things like in that kind of sector of the environmental field, I feel like a majority of people don't really get any kind of that experience. So it's really cool that you were able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and it was, in Monmouth County, or I guess probably in New Jersey, the environmental people working in our field is a small group of people, and you tend to see people over and over and over again. So people that I had met maybe once or twice working with NORB, then I got to meet them more when I was in the Watershed Ambassador program, and they got to know me better, and then I'd see them again later on in my career at other meetings, and so it's nice to do that.
It's crazy how small this world is. It's really, because you say, oh, I worked with this person, oh, I knew them from this, that, and the other. There's I think there's a lot of shifting, but people still stay in this like community, which is really, really cool.
Yep.
Now, after the Watershed Ambassador, where did you go from there?
Then I started working with NORB full-time at Sandy Hook. So the Sandy Hook office is under the Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit, which is a partnership program with National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Rutgers University. There's and a handful of other agencies that are part of that group. And we call ourselves the Sandy Hook Cooperative Research Program is what we call our offices up there. And most of the work we did and we're doing now is with Department of Interior, so working with national parks and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, monitoring their coastal shorelines and coastal beaches. And so mostly ocean-facing beaches, but also some bay-facing beaches as well. And so we do volume calculations, shoreline monitoring, dune topography monitoring, and that we've worked with Fish and Wildlife from Maine down to Virginia, and for the Park Service it's Assateague up to Cape Cod.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the bulk of what we do. And some of the projects are just long-term monitoring. We wrote the protocols for the monitoring. Other times it's been projects for response to Sandy, for example. We had a lot of projects that were monitoring change after Sandy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, for your work, when you started working full-time with NORB, is that how you found out about the position here?
Yeah, so when I was working with NORB, he is, a partner and part of the JC NERR, and I was working on a couple grants with him and then needed to be moved into a full-time position. And some of the work in the reserve is relatable to what we do up at Sandy Hook, just long-term coastal monitoring. And they hired me to work on monitoring with NORB, communications down at the JC NERR. Any additional, my background at that point was using GPS equipment and GIS software, so map making and remote sensing, so using LiDAR data for tracking elevation change in coastal habitats. And so I was supposed to be working with another person who had been working here at the time to monitor some of the JC NERR work that was going on. So my expertise in the remote sensing and surveying world is what I was doing here. But I was split between both offices.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for when you had first started here, and then transitioning into, now, did you have the same kind of title that you do now as Stewardship Coordinator, or was it different?
Nope, there was a Stewardship Coordinator here at the time who was doing more of the stewardship work at the JC NERR, and then when he left, I transitioned over into more of that position.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now for some of our listeners here that might not know what stewardship is and a little bit more about what that's about, so what is stewardship, and what do you, as the Stewardship Coordinator here, what kind of work do you do?
Okay, so stewardship for most people, the first thing they think of is natural resource management, or being a steward of the land and taking care of a natural resource. because the JC NERR doesn't own most of its property within the JC NERR boundary, we don't have that opportunity to manage our land or do habitat restoration, which would also fall under stewardship, which is what a lot of other NERRs do at their sites. They manage their land. They're the stewards of the property. So for the JC NERR, we have kind of two different roles for what would fall under stewardship. In my position, for me, stewardship is I'm monitoring the long-term monitoring and changes in the habitats that require management. So we're not doing the management, but we're tracking the changes. And so in the Jacques Cousteau NERR Sentinel site, which is our main area for long-term monitoring, we're monitoring elevation change in relation to sea level rise and climate change. And so we do that with a variety of different techniques, one of which is the surface elevation tables, which tracks accretion or lack of accretion in the marsh surface in relation to tidal elevations. And then another role for stewardship in the Jacques Cousteau NERR is taking people out into getting people involved in stewardship of the natural resource habitat. So we do that with our volunteer program, with our trail, and our Watershed ambassador does a lot of getting people involved in taking care of a natural resource that they care about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's kind of like twofold. Now, with the actual data that you go out in the field and collect, are you, or are we responsible for getting that information to either DEP, then to go to stakeholders, things like that? Do we take part of that, or do we ship our data to someone else who takes care of that?
Kind of both. So we collect the information, the scientific data that gets collected is part of all the reserves in the system have a Sentinel site and are collecting similar data, and then all of that data gets sent to the centralized data management office for the NERRs and is quality controlled and then posted online that's available for people to download or researchers to download for on public use. And you can look at that information whenever you want. However, because we're a research reserve, we do have ongoing research projects that use the information that we're being collected for broader and or more specific research projects that then get published into papers, and then people in our coastal training program, our education program coordinator use that information for their public programs, so they disseminate it into the public for us.
Okay.
So it's kind of multi-layered.
Okay. Now, from when you started in your position as stewardship coordinator all the way up until now, how has your experience been? Like, have you ebbed and flowed and changed throughout the years, or like different things you had maybe learned from and are now doing a little bit differently from when you had started?
I think probably just from when I've started to now, the biggest change in my role in the reserve, but also because of things I've learned as I've gone through the years, is just getting more actively involved in activities that are part of a broader national estuarine research reserve, like getting involved in the projects that involve more reserves than just our own, and the benefits that brings to your own reserve and to your own knowledge base. One of the fun things about being a stewardship coordinator, and this applies to a lot of different stewardship coordinators, is that we often get pegged into different projects that don't have to do anything to do with the project that we did the year before. So we're constantly relearning and learning new things all the time and new skill sets. And we have our core base skill set, but then sometimes, like right now, we're going to start doing a project on soundscape ecology. So monitoring the acoustics of our marsh and our habitats, but I have no background in that.
Yeah.
But it's great. But we're doing trainings and we're learning, and it applies to the general idea of long-term monitoring within the JC NERR and tracking changes in relation to climate change. And so by partnering with the Wells Reserve, I was able to learn how to do that and bring that to our reserve. So I think, being involved outside of the boundaries of the JC NERR have been really helpful.
And that's really cool, especially for members of the public that have seen like either the water quality monitoring or the like soil core monitoring, things like that. That's kind of something that people think, but I know a lot of people don't consider the acoustics and how that can not only have an impact on us, but the animals and everything that's happening around here. So it actually has more of an impact than people might have thought. Now, with that, is that something you're able to do within like a terrestrial environment, but as well as within an aquatic environment, actually being underwater, doing soundscapes that way? Is that something that you would be involved in with this?
So you can do a hydrophone, which is what would go underwater, versus an acoustic recorder, which is put up on a tree or a post above land. So I think the idea is a lot of work historically has been done with hydrophones, so like marine acoustics, and a lot of work has been done upland in prairies and forests and other upland habitats, but not a lot of work has been done in an estuary, which has both habitats happening at the same time. So we're hoping to get a program or a project funded that would help us look at both the interface of the marine to the terrestrial habitats using acoustic recorders. So that's the idea.
Okay, well, I'm definitely excited to hear more about how, as this kind of takes more shape and the logistics get underway, so it'll be really exciting to hear kind of where that project goes. So do you have any goals for your work here, or anything that you wish to accomplish or learn?
Well, I'm learning-wise, every year I'm presented with new things that I'm learning that I didn't even know I wanted to learn, but then I do want to learn them. So I think the nice thing about working here is that you are really constantly learning about new science, new data, new techniques to communicate with people. And so that's just a given by working at the reserve. Goals for my work here, I would really like to get more involved with our citizen science program and kind of make the program a little bit more robust and have more opportunities for citizen scientists at the JC NERR. And so that's a program that I'm working with Caitlin, our education coordinator, with. And so that's a big goal of mine.
And I know that's something that's so incredibly important, because you can put the data out there, and for people who are aware of those testing procedures and things like that and that background, it makes sense. But then making it a palatable, not only just a palatable way to translate that info, but also getting people involved, so it actually really makes that connection. So it's not this kind of separation between science and the public and the community, but really integrating the two, so that not only sparking this passion in people, but getting people to look at, say, going to the beach. They look at it a different way, instead of, I'm just going to go and put my chair out, put my feet in the sand, but then really looking at it as a habitat. So kind of making that connection. So that's incredible that you're working toward that, especially like you and Caitlin are working to kind of make that program more. And I know we've already done an incredible amount with that. So just making that, expanding that program is something that's going to be really cool to see for us to kind of keep track of and see in the future what that holds. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. And this has been a really cool outlook into what stewardship is, and not only just that, but hearing about how your journey was almost connected to the JC NERR the whole time, but like it took you those kind of different steps to actually
several years
to actually get here. But thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing what your projects hold for the future.
Yep, you're welcome.